This is Danielle, also known as Gently Smiling Jaws, and welcome to my Flosstube for August of 2025. To start with, the tea that I am drinking today, which is one that I don't remember the last time I was drinking it when I filmed a video, but I know I've shown it on here before. It is the Milky Blue Absolute from Mariage Frères, which is it's a French tea company, which I'm not super familiar with it. There you can see the tea there. And this was brought back for me from France as a gift from some relatives to me, and that's what I am drinking today. And in September, the Northwest Tea Festival is coming up, so I'm sure I will have something to say about that when the time comes. And that's not until very end of September, so it probably won't be until sometime in October that I talk about that. Also, before I get into the video, I will mention that down in the description, like I always try to do, there is information about donating eSIMs to Gaza, because if you've been paying attention, things just keep getting worse and worse, and no countries seem like they're ready to take any action about it, which is extremely disappointing. But the link below is just, you know, there are other ways you can help as well. This is one way, and the way that I like to highlight in my videos. So look below if you're interested in information about that. For cross stitch this month, I have no finishes. I have 4 whips to show you, and I feel like I've had a lot of gaps throughout the month where I wasn't necessarily, cross stitching, and I'm not cross stitching every day, but I feel like I got in some solid progress on those 4 whips that I have, so I will show you what I've got. First up is put a bird on it. This is where I am at currently. This is a pattern by Modern Folk Embroidery. It's also, here, I'll bring it closer here and show all of it. It is also the pattern that is a stitch along from EJ and Sheila of the Sunshine Stitchers are using this as their stitch along, which started in December of last year and runs through December of this year. And I put in a solid amount of work since I did my last video, so I just have this portion left. I got in 2,669 stitches, and I am currently at 87.29% done. The fabric is I believe it's an 18 count Aida from Banana Oil, and the floss is just DMC Blanc. And as I've mentioned in the past, because the fabric is so busy, that's why I went with just the solid color to allow the fabric to show off, and let the stitching just be monochrome. So that is where I am at currently. I got a good amount done. I don't have all that much left to do. I'm kind of thinking that maybe I will make a push and try and get this done I don't know, maybe within the next month. I'm not 100% sure on that, because as you'll see, I've got a lot of other things I'm working on as well. But I'm close enough that I know I will get this done this year. The question is whether I just forge ahead and try and get this one kind of off my plate and have a finish. So I am I am happy that I made a lot of progress, and I'm happy with how it's turning out, and I am looking forward to seeing it finished. So this was kind of first on my list that I have worked on since the last video. So let me get that set aside here. And then on to the next, which is one I haven't worked on for a bit. Next up is, this one I didn't take out of the hoop, but it is Cittlewick Green by Rosewood Manor. And in a previous video, I had talked about, since this is just the multi-page pattern, that the amount of time that I spent kind of taking photos of the pages to import into Pattern Keeper and going through, and there is, I forget how many sections I have this pattern in, because in the book there is one page where I think it's the number of rows tall doesn't quite match across all the pages in here, so with pattern, that causes Pattern Keeper to lose its mind and it can't figure out how things match up. So I have everything in Pattern Keeper, but it's in sort of multiple sections because it can't figure out how to match everything up, which is fine. I can still use Pattern Keeper to mark stuff off. And I find by doing that, I think this last time I stitched on it, I think I was able to do most things in Pattern Keeper. I had this next to me for reference, but I just prefer to have the electronic pattern to mark off where I am and to count the number of stitches done. Since it's not a PDF, Pattern Keeper isn't going to tell me how many stitches are in the pattern total and like what percentage I have done, but at least it will let me know, the number of stitches that I have marked off, so I am kind of keeping track of my progress that way. But this is where I am at. Before I just have two of the letters? I'm trying to remember. But this is where I'm at right now. The fabric, I'm blanking on the fabric. I will have to look back and see what that was. I may have. Alright, sorry for that coughing interruption here. I did look back in my notebook here, and I started Cittlewick Green back on January 16th of this year. The fabric is a 40 count Cyprium Newcastle linen. I didn't write down the fabric company, but I'm assuming it's a Picture This Plus. I'm not 100% sure. And the floss I'm using is the Vicky Clayton. It's the hand-dyed fibers. Has a silk pack, and that is what I am using for this. So what I got done this time is I put it in a total of 661 stitches, so I think maybe I just had the A and B, and then I worked on the C, part of the D, and I started working on this row of kind of flowers there. And I think getting those flowers, adding in and starting to see a bit more color in everything so far, I'm still, I put in a chunk of stitches, but I'm still not very far compared to the entire pattern, but just seeing that pop of color made me really like how this is looking. So yeah, I've been wanting to get back to this, so after I had got all that big chunk of progress in on Put a Bird on It, I was ready to switch. Not that I don't enjoy stitching on Put a Bird on It, but I wanted to work on something that I just felt like working on and not something I was doing as part of a stitch along. Because I've mentioned before, when there is stitching I am supposed to do, I become resistant to doing it, and then it feels like a job, and I get a case of the I don't want us, and it doesn't make it fun anymore. So this was a nice break from that, and I'm not sure how soon I'll be picking it back up again, but I'm happy for the progress that I did get in on this. And I'll just show this one more time. Obviously, where I am up in this part of the pattern, there's not a whole lot of color going on, but once you get down here, and I'm especially excited about the area with the birds and all that, that we've got lots of colors and visual interest going on. So starting up with the alphabet, and then more interesting things to come down the road. Alright, next up, this is something I've had in the works for a number of years. This time of year is always when even though I may pull it out at other times of the year, this time of year is when I always pull it out and work on it. But this is Birds to the Boughs by Lindy Stitches. I put in a total of 1,274 stitches. I am currently at 27.12%, and the stitching I did was, I had a lot of the bird done. I finished the bird, did like this area here, this up here, and the back stitching, as well as this part of the branch down here. So this is where I am at right now. And as I've pointed out in the past, at some point when I was stitching on this pretty early on, I miscounted something up here. So there is a gap between these little swirly things and the top border there, and you'll see that you don't have that gap over on the side. So when I saw it, my thought was, I'm not pulling that out and redoing it. So my thought is that at some point, once I get more of this done, I'm just going to fill in maybe some little dots or something up along here, just so there's something in there, just to kind of fill up some of the space and not, make the gap obvious. But that's where we're at on this. The fabric, trying to remember if this is a witch elt or what fabric that this is. I know it's 32 count. I know it's a printed fabric, so it's this light blue, but it's printed, not dyed. I started this a number of years back, when 32 count was the main thing that I was stitching on, and so that's what this is on. It's just using the called for DMC, and what I am doing for this, and I've talked about this before, but this is sort of in tribute to my parents, and I tend to work on it at the time of the year that's around the anniversary of my dad's passing, because his birthday, the date of his passing, their anniversary, and then his birthday is all kind of within a 1 month, time frame every year. So I always try and kind of pull this out and work on it at that time. And although it's in tribute to my parents, my mom is not somebody who is super interested in cross stitch or crafting, so I'm going to create this, and it's a tribute to my parents, but I'm keeping it for myself. That is my plan. So that is where I am at currently on that, and this was, as mentioned, working on it in Pattern Keeper, and yeah, the 1,274 stitches put in, and because it's a Pattern Keeper compatible PDF, the 27.12%, but Pattern Keeper doesn't show backstitch. Maybe one day it will, that would be nice. And so then I was going back and looking at the PDF to get that portion of the backstitch in. So yeah, I mean, obviously I still have quite a ways to go on this, but I was happy to get that chunk of progress done, and quite happy about that. Okay. Alright, next up is another one I haven't worked on in a while, and this is Dark Golden Delicious by the Artsy Housewife. And the progress I made on this was I got in 1,198 stitches, and I am at 17.73% done. And this one I am also using the silk pack from Vicki Clayton Silks. And what I got done on this this time was I had a little bit to go on this little meander up here, so I finished that. I did all of that down there. I had a portion of this border done, maybe to around here or so, so I went down here, and I started in on the house. So that is what I have done so far. The fabric, this is a Stitch Me fabric. I believe it's a 36 count. I am blanking on the name at the moment. But back when I got the silk pack for this, I was trying to decide whether I was going to use this, or I had another, I thought I was going to use, maybe is this one maybe called Evil Queen? This one might be called Evil Queen, because I think I had, was it a Picture This Plus or something called Huntress, and I thought that maybe that was the one I was going to use, because I think the piece that I have in my stash is a 40 count, but when I laid out the silk colors with that, I decided that this one was, I thought the colors went better with this, so this was ultimately my decision, even though I would have preferred a 40 count. But that is where I am at so far. Another one that I hadn't pulled out in quite a while, and so, you know, not a ton of progress on the main, you know, kind of scene there, but getting the borders in, although I certainly have like the little leaf thingies to do around there, and then the bigger border along here, all that. So certainly, you know, a ways to go on this, because I'm not even 20% done, but making more progress is nice. That's one of the things, like, I feel like I did this month, even though there was only 4 whips, I feel like I made a nice amount of progress on each one, and so I'm quite happy about that. Let me take another sip of tea here for my throat. Okay, as I mentioned before, my cross stitch plans for September. I know it's like a sampler September, and I think really my focus is going to be making more progress and maybe finishing Put a Bird on it. I've, you know, obviously made progress on these. I am still behind on Stitch for Pride. I forget the last month I did. I think I need to do, I haven't done either July or August. I'm feeling like I want to finish up Put a Bird on it, since that's sort of my stitching obligation. And even though it's not an obligation, and it's not in any way an actual obligation, only to myself. And I know finishing it by the end of the year is the goal, but at where I am now, I would like to keep the momentum going and just finish it, and then I have that, you know, quote unquote obligation off my plate, and then I can go back to kind of catching up on Stitch for Pride. So that's sort of my main plans for the next month. I don't have There's nothing else I'm trying to push myself to do aside from that. That's kind of the extent there. But I do have a number of things to show as far as when it comes to knitting and crochet. Earlier in the month I had a separate video that I put up talking about going to the Flock Fiber Festival here in Seattle. I know it's been around for a number of years. This was my first time going, so if you want the details on that, you can go watch the previous video. But I'm going to talk a little bit about that as I go over my projects, because I figured I would show them again here. First off, this is the first pair of socks, my wonky, not fully, matching, this one being significantly smaller than the first one. These are the first socks that I knit, and as if you'll remember from watching my previous videos, I had told myself I need to knit these socks with both the needles and the yarn that I had on hand, and then if I completely finished them and still wanted to do more socks, then I could buy new stuff. And so I had done the first sock. I had sort of been slowly working on the second sock and putting off working on it. And then as it got closer and closer to flock, I thought, I really need to finish that second sock. So I sort of raced to finish this before going to flock. And the evening before, it's the marketplace is, I think their like classes start on the Friday before, but then Saturday and Sunday is the marketplace. I had got tickets for sort of a weekend pass to go there, either or both days. With family stuff that was going on, I ultimately only went on Sunday, which means that there's potentially missing out on some things, because I'm sure there was stuff that sold out on Saturday that I didn't even get to see. But it sounds like, as I've been watching other people's videos about flock, that everything was much calmer on Sunday, which was probably not a bad thing for me this year. Maybe next year I will go on Saturday or both days. We will see. But because of the other stuff I had going on, I worked on this sock, and then the Saturday evening I stitched up the toe and finished off the sock. So before I went to flock, I had my socks finished. So with that done, that meant I was allowed to buy yarn, and my video on flock shows what I picked up during that. But shortly after going to flock, I started in on another pair of socks, and it's using the same pattern that I used on the ones that I just showed, which is the Summerly Design Company. I'll put it up on the screen. It's the I'm So Basic socks, and it's a free pattern, and there's kind of a YouTube video tutorial to go along with it. And since I had done that pair already and kind of knew the pattern, like, okay, second pair of socks, I am using yarn that I picked up at flock, and I'm going to do the same pattern over again. This time I'm going to actually do the contrasting cuff, heel, and toe, which is what the pattern shows. But for my first pair, I didn't want to add that additional complication. After doing things, kind of both ways, I'm sort of glad I made it easy on myself for the first pair, but doing the contrast colors on this second pair, I think certain things, like when you're picking up stitches when you're doing the heel, because you have the different color, it makes things a little easier there to kind of see where you're going. But this is my second pair of socks, and I finished them and I wore them, and I just washed them again and blocked them, and they are not entirely dry from washing them again. But these are actually pretty much matching in size, and they fit, and they have the contrasting color on the cuff and the heel and the toe, and I am very pleased with how these turned out. The yarn that I used is from a local company here called Hazel Knits. I haven't been to their actual shop myself, but I picked up the yarn at Flock, and I think the gray color is called Graphite, and this other color is called Seattle Mopop. This is for the Museum of Popular Culture, what used to be known as the EMP, the Experience Music Project. And if you have seen the pictures of that building, you know that these are like the colors of the building. And so yeah, I am very happy with how these turned out. So yeah, I sort of went in and focused on churning these out because I wanted to use the momentum that I had from finishing that first pair, the going to the festival and getting the yarn. And I think all of this month I have certainly felt more inspired and wanting to create from going down to Flock. You know, even though I consider myself, I am still at a pretty basic level when it comes to knitting and crochet, because even though I've done it, I don't do a ton of it. I'm certainly not any sort of expert, but just seeing everything around people, it made me more inspired to, you know, kind of pick stuff back up and work on more things. So yeah, I went through, did my second pair of socks, felt accomplished from that. And then the one of the skeins of yarn that I showed in the Flock video, which was this color of fingering weight yarn called Cloud Busting that I picked up from the Junie and Sai booth. For this, I decided, you know, at first I was going to do another pair of using the same sock pattern, but I got myself some size 1 circulars, and I had been using 2s were the smallest that I had, so I picked up a pair of size 1s, and I found another pattern that seemed like it would work well for you know, yarn that had some speckling on it, and this was the Rook Socks pattern by Tanis Fiber Arts. And so I have part of another sock done. This is another cuff down one. I'm starting work on the heel, but it's a basket weave kind of pattern on there, and it's pretty stretchy here. So even though it looks very down, it stretches. But I do notice that, and I've been trying to adjust as I've been knitting, that with the size 2 needles on that other pair of socks that I just showed, I felt like because my very first socks had been kind of so big that I was trying to knit tighter, and that, you know, worked. But then I was used to knitting tighter, so when I got these size 1s and was doing that, it was making it a bit too tight on this. So as I've been knitting this, I've been trying to kind of loosen up a bit more, so we'll see how it goes. But so partway into the heel on the first sock from this. Maybe someday I'll look into how to do the 2 at a time knitting, but I'm not there just yet. But yeah, I feel like and this one, the heel, this I ultimately decided on this pattern. One, because I bought another pattern from, I ended up buying a few patterns from this designer, because if you buy like 4 patterns or more, you automatically get a discount. And there was another pattern I knew I wanted to do some other socks, and like I said, I was looking for something that would work well with this yarn, that had a little more interest to it as far as, you know, texture, because the other ones are just, you know, pretty, very basic socks. So I wanted to have something that had texture, but wasn't super complicated. And because I was buying patterns from this one designer, I was then focusing on the patterns that that designer had, and this had texture, but the heel was the same type of heel, I think it's a gusset heel, as the ones I just did. So I'm like, okay, we're adding in the texture, let's not overly complicate this, let's do a heel that I'm already somewhat familiar with, and that's how I decided on this pattern. So I made a chunk of progress on this, but I haven't worked on it in a few days because then I started working on the next thing, which I will show here. Okay, so for a number of years, let me take a sip of tea here. For a number of years, I have wanted to, you know, sort of tackle knitting a sweater or a cardigan. And, you know, it's a thing where I am more confident in my crochet abilities than my knitting abilities, but doing the socks, you know, I've become more comfortable, but I still, you know, I haven't, other than the socks is sort of the closest to any, well, I mean, I've knitted like scarves and shawls, but those, you just wrap them around you and they fit. Socks are obviously getting more into paying attention to how it fits territory, but I have not tackled any sort of, you know, garment like a cardigan or a sweater, and that's been on my list of, you know, someday things to do. And actually years back I did buy a bunch of a particular yarn because I had plans to use that for a, you know, sweater or cardigan, and I haven't tackled that yet. But as I was looking at things, trying to decide what to do, if I was ready to jump into that, I had a couple things in mind, because like the socks, my rule to myself was, whatever you do for this sweater or cardigan, you have to do it using yarn that you have in your stash first. If you get through that and are ready to move on to something else, then you are allowed to purchase, you know, specific yarn to do a specific thing. But because I have a stash of stuff, like, let's start using that to begin with. So I was looking through things, trying to decide, and knowing how things went with my socks, and, you know, how things could be wonky. What I've ultimately decided on, and what I've started working on, is the Jethro cardigan by Tanis Fiber Arts, so the same designer as those basket weave, you know, socks I just showed. And the yarn that I am using for this is, well, there's two things. Is one, as I will have put the pattern up here so you will see. The reason I picked this pattern is because it's a combination of crochet and knitting. It's granny squares with knitting, you know, for the sleeves and the ribbing. And I thought, okay, I am more confident with crochet than knitting, so this seems great, so that I can do you know, a bunch of granny squares and have something that I'm confident about how I'm doing it. You know, it's like, I know how to do granny squares. I have never done a granny square blanket, because the idea of, like, joining them together has just been awful. But I know there's I know there's ways that you can do a joining of crochet around and crochet them together, and I just haven't done it. But I've now watched, you know, videos. In particular, the designer of this pattern has a playlist where shows the video that is the one that she sort of learned from, about the joining method that she does for this. And I looked at that and I'm like, perfect, I can do that, because in the past I had tried to do a blanket where you were having to sort of stitch all the squares together, and I threw up my hands and walked away because I'm like, I can't do this, I'm not doing this, I won't do this. But watching this video, I'm like, this I can handle. So I have, and then the other thing, so the pattern seemed to be stuff that I was confident with the crochet part, and then figured, you know, the knitting part, this would be a way to ease me into the creation of a sweater or cardigan. And as far as the yarn to use, what I figured that would work well is that because it's, you know, sort of a granny square pattern. Years ago, when I first started to crochet, I, you know, was working on learning, and I was going to do blankets. I made some blankets for family members, and at the time that I did this, there was a gal doing crochet, and I just looked up the blog last night. Lucy from Attic 24. I looked in, her blog is still active, although it looks like it's not updated maybe super often. I think it looks like July was the last time that there was an update, and in there was like some image links appeared to be broken, but the blog is still up. But she was designing a lot of very colorful blanket patterns that used Stylecraft DK, Stylecraft Special DK acrylic yarn. And so when I first, you know, got into doing, you know, crochet, and I was making these blankets, I made the, what was it, the coast ripple one that she did. And so I bought up a lot of, you know, this acrylic yarn because I was making these blankets, and I planned to make more blankets. So I have both some leftovers from the blankets that I did make, as well as a bunch of yarn that I got for the blankets that I had planned to make and never did. I looked back, and I've had this yarn since 2014. I have had it tucked away in tubs, and I'm like, this is yarn I have, and I need to use it. It's acrylic, inexpensive yarn, and so if I screw up with it, it's not like I'm, you know, messing up with any super expensive yarn. And if I finish this, and I'm assuming, since with all the colors that are going to be in it, I don't know how much of a thing this is going to be that I'm wearing out and about, versus just something to throw on at home in the colder months. And it's acrylic, so you can just toss it in the washer and dryer, and not something to be super, you know, precious about, or, you know, concerned about it. So I thought, okay, this seems like a perfect pattern for me to dive in on. So I pulled out, you know, my containers of yarn, went through, sorted through some stuff, and have kind of figured out what I'm doing. I picked some colors that I'm using for the granny squares. I think for the size I'm doing, I need to make 65 squares. I'm certainly not there yet, but I've got a good chunk done so far. And so I'm doing squares kind of in different groups of color, and then I have some other colors that I've set aside. And as far as joining everything together, and then like sleeves and stuff, I haven't quite figured out how much of each color I'm going to use and where it's going to go on the knitting portion, because since I had bought these for blankets and not for like a garment, and just figured I was going to be doing stripes or granny squares, I'm trying to plan out exactly how much of each color is going where. But my stacks of these are, let's start here. So these are my kind of purpley ones. I've got eight of these so far, in various, you know, the same colors in each one, but in different, you know, sort of arranging the colors differently on each. So I've got 8 of these, and I think I'm gonna, for each of these, I will be making another 8 of each of these, and then, you know, doing some additional as I I go through. And I've been trying to go through making, sort of each night I've been making a number of squares, and then so I'll do that for a bit, and then I'll sit and sew in ends for a bit. So these are, my blue ones I've got here. And yeah, so I've got lots of these. Got blues. These I haven't gotten to doing my section yet, but I've got greens and pinks, and I didn't have the colors that I had that were sort of red and pink. I didn't want to go full on red, and with the colors I ended up doing 2 different pinks and then a cream and a white, because some of the colors I didn't like how they were looking in sort of how these are kind of sort of gradient-ish. And the other ones that I just got these 8 done, but haven't got in all the, haven't woven in the tails, is we've got these orange and yellows here, and various arrangements. So after I've gotten all of my squares done and the tails woven in, so what have we got here? Got I have like 28 squares done so far out of the 65. So I will continue with that, and then the colors that I have to join everything together is sort of more lavendery shades. So yeah, like I said, still kind of planning out how to finish. Once I have all those squares completed, I'm gonna decide how I want everything laid out as far as what's in on either side as well as the back, and then I'm going to take a photograph of how I want everything laid out, and then starting to join them all together. So we'll see. Not sure how long that's going to take me to how long it will take me to finish, how far along I will be by my next video in September. We'll see. I'm not sure, but that's kind of what I've been working on as far as knitting and crochet. And obviously it's the most knitting and crochet I've done in a long time. I'm trying to, particularly with crochet, with both of them, as I'm sitting there and using my hands, and I know with the crochet motion in particular, I'm trying not to do it too long at once, and being mindful of getting up, stretching, trying to move my hand and my arm, and not do anything that's going to cause severe amounts of pain. Because back when I was trying to get through the last blankets that I was making as gifts, and I was doing a lot of it, and you could really feel that in the arm, and that was not a good time. So I'm trying to be conscientious about taking care of my hands and arms as I do this. So yeah, I think for Flock, for me, in addition to just having a bunch of vendors in one place and being able, to see stuff in person and purchase it, which was certainly nice. It was the inspiration and going and tackling projects that are new to me, and then having kind of the motivation to try things that seem like they may be a little tricky, but embracing the learning process. So I think it was very worthwhile, even though I was only able to make it to the one day of Flock. What else? Not too much more to cover. I have not really been doing much reading recently. I'm still working on the Slither book. There was maybe a day or two where I did more, listening and reading along in the hard copy book that I have, and I find with that book that as I am going through it, I am enjoying it, but because it's you know, nonfiction, informational, and there's not a plot to it, I don't have kind of that pull to go back and kind of go through it and finish this up, because I gotta know what happens next. And you know, so I've backed off quite a bit on the reading. I've had holds come in from the library, and I've, you know, kicked out my hold date and let other people, you know, read, since I wasn't ready to forward yet. And I'm sure I will get back to more reading, but backing off for a bit as I've been working on these various things. And then I've also, you know, from the time of filming this, we're about a week into the Donna Adelson trial, and actually, as I'm filming this, this is my last Friday off before I go back to the regular work weeks, and I've been listening to the trial coverage today, and I'm actually taking a break from watching that to film this. Once I'm done, I'm going to go back, pick up where I left off, put that YouTube video on 2x speed, and catch up to where that is, because yeah, that whole thing, I feel bad for the family of the man who was murdered, and very bad for all of the kids involved in this. But man, it's the whole family dynamic situation in this, it's bonkers. So we'll see what happens here, and whether there are more arrests and trials to come after this, because yeah. And to put things in perspective, okay, now the yarn that I am using for these, I bought that yarn back in 2014, and this trial, the murder happened back in 2014, and the prosecutors have been slowly going through the people who were involved and putting them on trial. And there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, I think there are 3 people involved who are serving life in prison, 1 who is serving they're in process of serving their 19-year sentence, and then the Donna Adelson, who is on trial now to see what's going to happen with her. And then there's always the possibility of more people in the family being charged. So we'll see what happens there. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is, because we're almost at September, and it's the time of year that the Hobonichi Weeks planner, well, Hobonichi Weeks is what I've been mostly using, but the Hobonichi planners go on sale. And last year was the first year that I didn't purchase directly from Hobonichi. I had decided what I wanted, and I thought, well, maybe this year I will purchase stateside and give that a try and see whether that's more cost effective. Ultimately, I had decided that with what I had purchased last year, it would have been better for me to order directly from the Japanese, Hobonichi store. But obviously this year, now we're right in the midst of the whole tariff situation, and also the tariff situation that is constantly changing. And even assuming that everything is going to go into effect as they say it is, everyone is confused about how it's going to work. There aren't systems in place to fully deal with it yet, so everything is a big question mark right now. And then, given what has been happening, tomorrow everything could change, so who the hell knows what's going on. So once again, I am figuring that it is not, even though last year it would have been monetarily a better decision based on my order to order directly from Japan, I believe that is no longer the case, and I don't want to deal with the confusion of what's going on. And my thought is that this year I may limit myself solely to a new weeks, because that's what I've been using to for my cross stitch. So I have, a number of years ago, I bought this little cover here, and in it I keep the weeks. I actually have this year and the previous year weeks. So this one is 2025, which is the year of the snake. So it's got these little snakes on there, and they're actually like the little snake toys, the ones that kind of, you know, wiggle around, the segmented ones. So that's 5, and the previous year was the year of the dragon, so there was seahorses, since they're like little dragons. But this is what I use to keep track of. I know, you know, what I'm working on, how many stitches I've got in. And so I may be limiting my Hobonichi purchases this year to just a new weeks. And that, the one that I would be getting to continue, I've just been getting kind of the ones with the zodiac animal for the year. And so the one for next year, which is the year of the horse, looks to be like kind of a tan color with horses on it. And maybe it's maybe not my favorite out of the designs that they have, but I want to keep going with the series that I have. And I think when I was looking, perhaps the design I like the most might be something that's exclusive to a particular, I don't remember if it's a Japanese exclusive or to a particular store or whatever, but I think I'm just going to go with the horse one, because that one should be available through JetPens, and we'll see. What I have been doing for my Flosstube notes is I have been using one of the Day Free cousin books that doesn't have a page a day, but I just been using this to put my you know, my Flosstube notes in. And I have to look and see, I may have just a blank notebook instead, just one of the blank grid ones in a cousin size. So I'm going to check and see what I have, and because I haven't been noting too much stuff on the calendar section of this, I may just reuse one of my past covers with a fresh notebook and just use that instead of buying something new. We'll see. There's some of the other covers. I mean, they always have some interesting covers. There wasn't anything this year that super jumped out at me, but there was some of the color ones that I liked, but it looks like you can't purchase any of those covers without the book itself, which then makes it more expensive. And I haven't, in the past, I have kept a daily journal. In some years, I was very good at writing stuff every single day, and then it dropped off. I find for me that the higher my stress level, the more I want to use a journal. And so a number of years back, when things in my life were super stressful, I was using that constantly, and I was very glad to have that. As things have calmed down, I have not felt the pull to do it too much, and so although I'm looking at those planners, and there's some that I like, oh, those are pretty colors, I like that, I kind of want that, I'm trying to decide whether realistically I would actually make use of it or not. So right now I'm leaning to just getting my weeks, so that I've got, you know, my next stuff for next year for my cross stitch stuff. And you know, I know a lot of people use Notion, and on the one hand, it would be nice to kind of have all that data just right there and let it sort up and calculate things for you about, you know, get you all your stats for everything that you've done. But part of me just doesn't want to go through the setup of entering all my stuff in there. I actually do have Notion, and I do have what is the templates or whatever that people use to do the cross stitch stuff on there, but I've just felt I've been very resistant to wanting to sit down and enter all the info in. And on the one hand, I'm sure that if I did it, I would be happy that I did it, and I would probably use it and make use of it, but I don't know, right now it just sort of seems like it's a mountain I don't want to climb to get there. If I could just wave a magic wand and have everything perfectly filled out and ready for me to use, then yeah, maybe I would switch over to digital. But also part of me likes the fun of the little notebooks and stuff here, so that's what I'm sticking with for the moment. And I think that is all I have for right now. It looks like we are at just about an hour of video, although I'm sure that at least a couple minutes of that will be cut out in the editing process. So I think that that is it for August. I will see you again in September. We'll see how much I've got done as far as cross stitch and any other fiber arts related stuff, and then, as I said, it will probably be in October that I'll probably, like I did for Flock, I'll probably do another shorter video that's kind of just about tea festival stuff, and that's another thing where we'll, yeah, the whole tariff thing, and I understand that for many countries, the folks who live there, that everything that they order from overseas, they have to pay, you know, additional money for everything that comes into the country, and we in the U.S. have been, you know, have been spoiled in having that $800, you know, de minimis thing that is now going away, but it's part of it. And if you have been watching this channel, you in general know my feelings on the whole administration and everything that the U.S. is going through right now, and the fucking shit show that this country is right now. And it's not only the changes that are being made, it is how they are being made and the chaos that is created by all of this that is it's a problem. And yeah, so before I devolve into a full-on rant about other things, I'm going to end this video here. I'm going to get back to work on making more granny squares. I think that's going to be what I'm doing today, and then I'm going to try and get this video edited and uploaded by Sunday. So for those in the US, I hope that you are enjoying your long weekend by the time you're seeing this, and I will see you again in September. Thanks for watching. Bye.